Hello viewers, myself is Dr. Neeta and you are watching my channel Learn Literature with Dr. Neeta. So let us begin today's topic.
Hello dear students, today we are going to learn psychoanalysis and it is the second part of my video, and in the first part of it I have described an overview of psychoanalysis, in which I have defined psychoanalysis and how this theory came into existence. This has also been discussed in that video, and the contribution of different psychoanalysts to the theory of psychoanalysis is there in the first part of the video. The second part of this video is mainly based on Sigmund Freud, and we would discuss his contribution and his theory of psychoanalysis. It is advisable that first you should go through the first part so that you can understand a general idea, because being a student of literature, it is very essential to understand what psychoanalysis is. So now we are going to begin the second part. So he is Sigmund Freud. He was an Austrian neurologist and he developed this theory, or rather a technique or method of psychoanalysis, basically to understand and treat the patients who were suffering from the different mental disorders. He was born in Freiburg, which was in Czech Republic, and he belonged to a Jewish family. His father, Jacob Forward, was a wool merchant, and his mother, Amelia, came from the prosperous background. His family moved to Vienna when Freud was merely 4 years old. And from the early childhood, Freud was very good at his studies, and initially he studied law at the University of Vienna, but later shifted to medicine. He got his degree of medicine in 1881. And he began to work in the General Hospital at Vienna, but later he specialized in neurology and pursued further studies in Paris with the famous neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot. Now, Freud's contribution, how he contributed to psychoanalysis. Freud began developing his ideas that were later termed as psychoanalysis. So one thing you should keep in mind, that psychoanalysis is the theory which is based on the practical and theoretical experiences of Freud. He was dealing with his patients, and after observing their condition and after analyzing different facts related to those patients, he thought that this kind of thing, which he called later on psychoanalysis, would be helpful for them. So when he was treating his patient, especially the patient suffering from hysteria, he used to hypnotize them. It means he used hypnosis as a method, and then he tried to understand the unconscious thoughts and feelings of those people. But later he came to the conclusion and he changed this technique of hypnosis, or he left this hypnosis method, and he came to the free association of ideas. So without hypnotizing the patients, he began to analyze the ideas, and he asked the people to talk something, whatever there is in their brain, and he listened a number of things from the patient, and out of that he tried to uncover the unconscious thoughts and feeling. In 1902, Freud and his colleagues formed Vienna Psychoanalytical Society. So first psychoanalysis was established as a theory. After that psychoanalysis became a discipline after the establishment of this psychoanalytic society in 1902. As far as the works of Freud are concerned, he gave a number of works which are influential even today. The famous work is Interpretation of Dreams, which was published in 1899, and it is still quite a creditable work and very popular one from Freud's pen. Apart from that, 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, published in 1905, Introduction to Psychoanalysis, 1917, and Beyond the Pleasure Principle, 1920, the Ego and the Id in 1923. These works were originally published in German, but later on they were translated in English as well as in other languages of the world, and they are still the popular ones, and they have influenced psychology and psychoanalysis also. He was of the Jewish ancestry. He came from the Jewish family, and it was not very favorable for Freud. As the Nazi regime rose to power in Germany, Freud, a Jewish descendant, faced increasing persecution, and because of that, in 1938, he and his family fled from Austria and settled in London. Even in London, he continued his writings and research, but his health began to decline in 1930s, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and at the age of 83 he died. Now, what is psychoanalysis? Psychoanalysis is the part of psychology. Basically, the clinical psychology. It is the part of clinical or the therapeutic part of psychology, developed by Sigmund Freud in late 19th and early 20th century. It explored the interplay of unconscious processes and reveals how these processes influence thoughts, emotions, and behavior. So, as I told, that Freud thought that the unconscious of a person is quite significant. So, it is very essential to explore the interplay of unconscious processes so that the abnormal actions or the abnormal behavior of anyone can easily be understood. He was of the opinion that the unconscious processes ultimately influence the thoughts, emotions, and behavior of an individual. He also believed that the human behavior is determined by unconscious conflicts, and these conflicts are often rooted in the early childhood experiences. It means, in the eyes of Freud, the childhood experiences, they may be positive, they may be negative ones, they have a great influence, or they influence a lot the unconscious mind of an individual. Now, what psychoanalysis involves? It involves bringing these unconscious thoughts and memories to the conscious level. Through the process of psychoanalysis, what the psychoanalyst does, he is trying to bring these unconscious thoughts and memories, which are often, at a number of times, they are traumatic. They are trying to bring them to the conscious level and trying to erase them so that a person can lead a normal and comfortable life with a proper mental health. Now, what this psychoanalysis has to do with literature? This is the question. So, in literature, we are not having the psychological sick patients. In literature, we are not going to treat them. So, treatment part, keep the treatment part away from it. But in literature, we are getting the characters. Either they are the characters of the novels or the stories or the drama. So, the psychoanalytic studies of these characters can be made, which can make the meaning of the text deeper, which can make the understanding of the character better. And that is why psychoanalysis has been used as a technique to analyze the different literary characters, their motives, their behavior, their thoughts. They can be understood in the light of psychoanalysis. Now, this is Freud's idea of mind as an iceberg. Freud has compared mind to an iceberg, and as 1/3 part of the iceberg is under water. Similarly, this 1/3 is the unconscious or preconscious mind, while only 2/3 is unconscious or preconscious mind, only 1/3 mind is conscious. And what others are seeing and what the person himself is concentrated on is the unconscious or is the conscious mind. This part is visible to others and this part is consciously seen by the individual himself. So these three parts, conscious one, the upper one, and then the preconscious. This preconscious stores memories and knowledge. And the most significant part to be studied in psychoanalysis is the unconscious one. And this unconscious one possesses the things about which we are unaware of and cannot become aware of. We cannot be aware of these parts because they are hidden deep into our mind. And what are those things that had been studied by Freud? In this unconscious part, what remains embedded? There are the fears, they are the unacceptable desires, they are the violent motives, irrational wishes, immoral urges, selfish needs, shameful experiences and traumatic experiences. They remain here in this unconscious part. And when there is too much of them, then they affect the behavior and the emotions of a person and he begins to suffer from the mental disorders. So mental disorders are responsible to the abnormal behavior of the people. If one has to check that abnormal behavior or one has to get rid of that abnormal behavior, then the psychoanalysis is essential. Why he is doing the particular kind of behavior? Because something is there which is disturbing him or her persistently. So there is a need to be worked here at this level. And what the psychoanalysts do? Psychoanalysts are trying to take these things from unconscious to conscious level through certain techniques of psychoanalysis. And when the things are at the conscious level, with the help of certain techniques and therapy, they are erased and the person gets a comfortable mental health. So these are the key concepts which I made clear even in the picture. So about the unconscious mind I have talked to you, and it is possessing the repressed memories and desires and conflicts. Now he is also talking about this famous concept of id, ego and superego. According to Freud, the psyche of an individual comprises of these three things. One is the id, that a primitive instinctual desire, then there is ego and there is superego. In the next slide I would let you know in detail what they are. He has also given the concept of defense mechanism, and defense mechanism is to protect anyone or the person from anxiety and threatening thoughts. So we would discuss just in the further slides these concepts in detail. Now first is the concept of id, ego and superego. So according to Freud, anyone's personality or the psyche can be divided into three parts: id, ego and superego. The id is like the primitive part of our personality. Its function is based on the pleasure principle. So if we are going to analyze anyone's personality, we would definitely find these three things: id, ego and superego. The difference in the personality of one person from the other is how much part of id is there, how much part of ego is there, or how much part of superego is there in they are in different ratio in different personality, and this different ratio makes the difference. So id part everyone is having the id part, but how much? It makes the difference. So this id part is the part which is based on the pleasure principle. And there is a desire for the immediate gratification of our basic needs and desires without considering the consequences of our immediate gratification. For example, you may understand that there is a person like this. He is really hungry and all of a sudden he sees a cake. Now, what happens? His id comes and begins to work on the pleasure principle. At any cost, he wants to eat this cake just now. And he eats that cake because he has to satisfy his pleasure. He needs the immediate gratification of needs. Now, one thing, he never thought if it is appropriate to eat it or not. He never thought to whom that cake belongs. He never thought. He saw the cake, he wanted to satisfy him. This kind of behavior is because of the id. Now, another one. This is ego. It is the rational part of our personality. It operates based on the reality principle. So, id was working on the pleasure principle. Ego is working on the reality principle. What is reality principle? It is helping us to make realistic decisions. Now, ego is that part of our psyche which helps us to make the realistic decisions by considering both what we want and what is socially acceptable. In id part, there was only what we want. But in ego, there is what is, we are considering both the things, what we want and also what is socially acceptable. If we take the same example, we see that ego might acknowledge hunger. Of course, the person is hungry like the previous one, and the desire for cake, and he or she is having the desire of cake. But at this time, if he is considering the factors, the cake belongs to me or someone else. Is it a birthday cake? Whose birthday it is? He may also think, if I eat too much of cake, it will affect my health badly. So, before eating, he is thinking about the consequences of eating the cake. So, this kind of reality principle works in ego. Now, the third one. That is the superego. The superego is like our moral compass. It means it based on the morality principle. It develops as we internalize societal and parental standards, rules and expectation. So superego gradually develops in our personality when we are very much aware of or when we have internalized the rules and regulations set by the society, set by our parents or set by our surroundings, by our family or friends. So, these societal and parental standards, if we are working on the pleasure principle, then they compel us to have a feeling of guilt, shame and pride. It means superego guides us towards morally right actions and away from the morally wrong ones. Now come to the previous example of cake. So in id you have seen the id has just satisfied his need and taken the cake. At ego level, we have the person has thought about the consequences, whether it is right or not. And superego might remind him, if he is eating this cake, someone else may get annoyed by that because the cake belongs to him. Or It is also reminding that it is not good to eat cake because it may be dangerous for the health. So, then in that condition, he gets a kind of check. Even if he is taking, it means if it is superpowering or overpowering his ego and superego, it would definitely make him or her feel guilty. So, these three elements are always found in the personality of an individual. The difference in the personality is based on the ratio and proportion of id, ego and superego. Everyone has that, but sometimes the id is winning in someone's personality, ego is winning, or the superego is winning. It varies from person to person. So he would say, I can't have it. It is not right. So it means morally, he is thinking morally whether it is right or wrong. Now, another concept is the defense mechanism, and defense mechanism is also a kind of psychological strategy which is used by the individuals unconsciously to protect himself. Protection from what? Protection from unpleasant thoughts, feelings and situation. It is in a way a kind of rationalization. It means justification that involves creating logical or socially acceptable explanation to justify behaviors, thoughts or feelings that might otherwise be unacceptable and uncomfortable. Now, with the help of example, we can understand. Someone fails in an important exam. Someone knows that, someone easily knows what are the factors that he failed in exam. But instead of accepting the responsibility for not studying enough, he uses a defense mechanism for him. And he rationalizes himself. He justifies himself by saying, the exam was unfair. That is why I failed. Or he would say, the questions were tricky. That is why I can't attempt. Or the professor never explained the material properly. He would say like that. It means he is justifying that I am not responsible for that. And such kind of mechanism is known as the defense mechanism. So defense mechanism is used at the psychological level to rationalize even our wrong actions. And why we are doing it? By rationalizing in this way, he avoids facing uncomfortable truth that their lack of participation contributed to their failure. So they don't want to accept the fact that he failed because he couldn't concentrate on the examination. Now, another thing that is told by Freud is the psychosexual development. Freud proposed that early childhood experiences, particularly related to sexuality, played a crucial role in shaping personality and mental health. And for that, he staged 3 stages in the psychosexual development of an individual. These are 3 or more than 3, but basically in childhood there are 3 stages. Number 1 is 0 to 1 year. Infants, they derive pleasure and satisfaction through oral activities such as sucking, biting and tasting through mouth and lip. So they are satisfied merely by using their mouth and lips, and they are getting pleasure feeding with their mother or biting or tasting something. So this stage up to 1 year is the oral one. After that, from 1 to 3 years is the anal stage. The focus shifts to the process of toilet training. Children experience pleasure and control through bowel movements. At this case, it is suggested by Freud that the successful toilet training is crucial for the development of a sense of autonomy and self-control in a child. So, at the age of 3, up to the age of 3, toilet training should be given to the child so that he can attain a sense of autonomy and self-control. And after that, from 3 to 6 this is quite significant. From 3 to 6 is the phallic stage. According to Freud, children develop unconscious sexual desire for the opposite sex parent and may experience rivalry and jealousy with the same sex parent. And attraction towards the opposite side parent has been said here like the Oedipus complex. So he says that Oedipus complex is essential for the resolution of the Oedipus complex. It means attraction towards the opposite side parents. For example, a male child is attracted towards his mother, and such kind of attraction is the Oedipus complex. And this Oedipus complex, the name Oedipus is from the Oedipus king, who because of the certain circumstances or because of certain actions of the fate, he has to kill his father and has to marry with his mother. So from there this term has came, Oedipus complex. So if during the phallic stage, the child used to feel Oedipus complex, but it is very essential at this stage to get it resolved, because it helps in the development of gender identity and super ego. Then there is after the child's 6 to 11 year, there is the latent stage. Sexual impulses are largely suppressed during this stage, and the focus is on the development of the social and intellectual skills. This is the period of life where social and intellectual skills are getting developed, and children engage in activities such as school, friendship and hobbies. And after that there is the genital stage, and from adolescence the person becomes an adult, and with the onset of puberty, reactivates sexual impulses which were there for the opposite sex parents in just the phallic stage. But in genital stage, these sexual impulses are not towards the opposite sex parents, rather they are towards the opposite sex, and individual become capable of mature sexual relationship. The focus shifts from individual development to forming intimate relationship and contributing to society. So these are the different stages of psychosexual development. Freud argued that unresolved conflicts or fixations at any of these stages, if certain conflicts or fixations remained unresolved in these stages, they could lead to the psychological issues in the adulthood. So as a student of literature, if you are trying to understand the character, literary character at the adult age, you may just think, if he is behaving abnormally as an adult, it means there would be some conflict or fixation in the previous stages of his life, because of he is behaving in such a manner. So psychoanalysis is such a technique with which the characters can be easily analyzed in literature also. Now Oedipus complex, I told you, proposed the Oedipus complex involving unconscious feelings of desire for the opposite sex parent and rivalry with the same sex parent was critical aspect of human development, as I told you already. Freud believed that dreams provide, this is another concept, the dream analysis. Dreams are studied very much by Freud, and he came to the conclusions that dreams are also having or they are the representation of the unfulfilled desire that often remain hidden in our unconscious. So analysis of dream would lead to the exploration of unconscious mind, and as the unconscious mind is getting explored through dream analysis, then dream analysis also becomes a method to be used in psychoanalysis to explore hidden meanings and conflicts. Now, what is the impact of psychoanalysis on literary theory and criticism? I told you that it is helpful in character analysis, I told you at length during my discussion. You can explore the motivation, conflicts, and symbolic representation of the characters of the story or the drama or the novel. In the pieces of literature, symbolism and imagery is often used. So psychoanalysis helps in interpreting symbols and imagery within literature, because symbol may be seen as representation of unconscious desires or the societal conflicts. Narrative structure can also be understood better with the psychoanalytic perspective. In that manner, we can analyze narrative structure, identifying elements such as repression, catharsis, and resolution of psychological conflicts in literary works. So, narrative structure can also be studied from the angle of psychoanalysis. Apart from that, the authorial intent, it means the psychoanalysis would also throw light on the unconscious motivation and experiences of the author with which he has written that text. So, apart from that, we can also understand how the reader is trying to understand that text. Not only how author is trying to write, but why and how the reader is grasping that text. We can also understand through the psychoanalytic method. So, this is about Freud and his psychoanalysis. Thanks for your patience listening. Perhaps you would be able to understand it well.